Welcome to Digitally. For today's episode, I am thrilled to welcome a great friend, practitioner, and a thought leader in the field. It's JoAnn Stonier. Now, JoAnn is Chief Data Officer for MasterCard, which is really just how I've gotten to know her. But previously, she studied law, she studied accounting, and she has studied design thinking. So you can see that she's a trilingual of sorts. She currently is an adjunct professor at the Pratt Institute for Design Management and Business Strategy. But here's the thing that I've really come to turn to her for and really respect her. She's deep in policy. JoAnn serves in the United Nations Expert Group on Governance for Artificial Intelligence, and she's co-chair of the World Economic Forum's Global Future Council on Data Policy. I'm so happy to have her here with us. Thank you for joining and welcome, JoAnn.
Thank you, Sanjay. It's always a pleasure to chat with you. So it's a pleasure to be here.
Great, JoAnn. You know, just to get started and just to get us in your shoes for a minute or two, talk to us a little bit about the role of a CDO and where that's headed.
Sure. Well, I think, first of all, the role of the CDO or the Chief Data Officer or Chief Data and Analytics Officer, because I think they're kind of getting combined, is still evolving. I've been in this job coming up on 4 years, and it's still a relatively new position, which is a lot of fun because it means that the individuals who occupy these jobs are getting to define the role within the context of their organization and how their organization uses data and uses information. And I think the fun part is that most organizations have just scratched the surface on how data is an element of their business strategy and how data can actually enable that strategy into the future. And so I think the data officer really is the embodiment of how does data part and parcel of the business strategy. And I think we talk amongst ourselves about data either being an offensive strategy or a defensive strategy. And I think it's actually both. But what do I mean by that? I think data can be used for defensive purposes, meaning for efficiencies, right? For cost effectiveness, for evaluating an organization's value chain in order to get more out of it. But I think the offensive use of data is really where many, many organizations are coming to, meaning how is data part and parcel of your product strategy, your growth strategy, your customer service strategy? And I think your CDO or your CDAO is really the executive who really thinks about those things and then thinks about what data do you have, what data do you need, what's the data information lifecycle that you need to capture, and what information should you be acquiring in order to actually get the information you need to create that really interesting future. And I think during COVID, we've really seen that take off. So that's what I think right now what a CDO is. But
so that's really interesting, JoAnn, because I think what you're saying is, listen, there's a piece of it that has to do with how do you use data to serve the business you're at, make it more efficient, more effective, drive more value. And then there is the role of how do you use data to drive the business itself, to come up with a business model, to actually figure out the experiences that you're going to deliver. And essentially, the business itself becomes, an end result in the way you think about the data. I look at MasterCard and I think about data-driven organizations, and I'm saying, wow. Talk to me a little bit about how does sort of data connect to business strategy and how do you build businesses that are data enabled?
Well, if you think about MasterCard, we've been data enabled the entire time, right? We sit in our core business, our business that is probably best well known. We sit in between the banks and the merchants, right? We process transactions, right? So every time an individual taps, swipes, uses their phone, keys in those magic numbers, right? What we're doing is we are enabling global commerce, right? By the use of data, right? We're connecting and creating an ecosystem that enables transactions in a safe, simple, and secure way globally. And all of that is data enabled. Now, when it was first put together, there was a lot more to it and a lot more manual effort. But right now, it's all digitally enabled globally, so we can make payments safe, simple, and secure. But as we've grown, we also recognize that all of that information, and we only really get a very small amount of information when you really think about it in our basic transaction data. We get the date, time, place of the transaction, the card number. But the volume of that information is really interesting to look at from an econometric perspective, fraud prevention perspective, security perspective, right? All of that information creates incredible information insights. And that's really what's powered our business forward and into some new areas as well. And that's kind of where data now is a new asset class for MasterCard.
You say a really interesting phrase, data as an asset class. We've thought about manufacturing plants with machinery as an asset class, right? Data as an asset class, I mean, there's a whole other implication to that. How do you value it? How do you store it? How do you define policy towards it? Talk to us a little bit more about the implications of data being an asset class, not a collateral of automation.
So I think right now we're still at the point where data is considered kind of data exhaust, right? You've heard that, or your data footprint. But I think that in the future, we're going to see data trying to be valued more as an asset because it's embedded kind of in a lot of organizations' stock price, right? Because of what it generates. And if you think about it as an asset that needs to be managed at a minimum in an organization, it's no different than your financial assets, your technology assets, and your people assets, right? It needs somebody who's going to be minding it so that it can actually be enabled, so it can be curated, it can be taken care of, so you have the right quality of information so that it's not abused, so you have the data that's fit for purpose for whatever you're trying to achieve, right? Because there's so many now ethical implications of how you use the right information for the right purpose so that you get the right result. So data actually is beginning to evolve into its own asset inside organizations. It's not quite yet on the balance sheet, but I don't think too far into the future, we are going to see a moment in time where organizations are going to actually get there. Not yet, but I do think that we're beginning to navigate it the way we do other important pieces of a business that need to be managed.
And certainly, I think more and more we're starting to see in the public markets that market valuations of companies actually intrinsically take into account.
Absolutely. Absolutely, right? That's where it's being valued today, right? It's in the stock price. It's in what organizations are doing with the data, either that they're stewards of, that they acquire, or that they create, or maybe all three. And so that's where it is today, but who knows into the future, how it will be evaluated.
JoAnn, that's fascinating. I am going to push back a little bit and maybe to try and tease out something else. I think data as an asset in its own category and building that in place, so critical, so important to get it right. And yet, to be able to take advantage of it and to be able to harmonize and extract it and get value from it, you need something else. And I think that's the talents and skills in the employees in the company. Talk to us a little bit about the other half. How do you get value from all of this stuff that, for instance, you're building so well at MasterCard?
So I do think that talent, right, is in, I don't know, not enough supply in some ways, right? I think we can have a whole conversation, Sanjay, about the types of talent that every organization needs in order to utilize this new material of innovation, right? We hear data is the new oil, right? But it's not the data itself. It's what you can actually perceive in the data to create information and insights, right? What do you do with it to complement your business and to actually grow it into the future? And so what the skills are that are needed really, right? It's that you need people who are data scientists, you need people who can do data analytics, but you also need people who, I hate to say it because you gave it away in my introduction, you need people who can do design work, right? Who can understand how data can be useful in how it's designed. You also need people who understand the quality of the data, right? What type of information? Is it accurate enough? Is it complete enough? Is it consistent enough, right? And then certainly you need all of that. You need to understand lineage of information, especially as we use more and more advanced tools like artificial intelligence and machine learning, where those tools are trying to look at large volumes of data to try to see what does the data itself tell us, what conclusions can we draw, and how do we put that into our products and solutions? Because eventually the machines are going to learn from the algorithms and insights that we create. And we need to make sure that those are right, that they're just, and that they're future-proof, right? Even though people will continuously innovate with those tools, it means we need skill sets of people that are both thinking and understanding deep data analytics, but also the implications of the products and solutions. So it's a kind of an area where people have to be willing to keep on learning, right? And I think that's one of the most important skill sets for anyone who's going to do this work.
I think you said it so well, JoAnn. Look, I think we've learned over the years that actually on the talent side, getting a set of skill sets around data quality and data lineage, as you said, and really being able to harmonize and harvest and extract and normalize all the data, key skill set number one. The understanding the business and the context, and then being able to explore the data to drive insights and be able to convert all of this information into judgment, into insights. Second big set of skills, bilingual skill set, by the way, as you said. And then I think the thing that you added to me is just think about design thinking as a way to rethinking how you do business in the first place. And you design think a different approach to what are the decisions that need to be made, therefore what is the information that's required, therefore what is the data that needs to be in place to make those decisions, and how do you re-architect your fundamental business model in the back of that, and that requires design thinking. So what a fantastic summary. JoAnn, I want to come back with you because I don't think we got to this, but I do want to explore the topic of governance and security and policy and privacy. JoAnn, before we end this episode, though, anything else you want to add on chief data officers, chief data and analytics officers out there amongst us?
I just think that you also have to be able to look ahead a lot, right? Because what we're being asked to do is essentially really design today for tomorrow. And so I think we always have to be, as we're looking to design the next set of products and solutions, we have to make sure that we understand the implications. So happy to talk further about all of it, but really enjoyed the conversation.
JoAnn, designing today for tomorrow and thinking through the implications for the future generations to come. What a great way to end this episode. Thank you for joining us today. We'll see you soon again.
Thanks.